You ever have a homeless person like yell at you before? You have no idea what that guy's intentions are. You have no idea what you're going to get dragged into. But we have a tendency, we heard someone say something about us in the office, saw someone said something negative about us online, and we have a tendency to get dragged into that. Now, we all can agree that maybe some people start out on the track of life, maybe further behind. If you're not prepared for something, it doesn't really matter how mentally tough people think that you are. You will not survive that. There is no excuse to not be able to figure out a way to get ahead. I also had something that you would call an anti-hero. My anti-hero was my brother Mike. Welcome to another edition of Saturday School. Hopefully, kids, you are on page 43 so that we're all on the same page. Here at Saturday School is where I give you a little sermon and get to teach you guys some cool stuff. Today I want to talk about mental toughness and how I think that mental toughness maybe sometimes is misunderstood. I believe that mental toughness sometimes is a little bit of a myth, and let me explain why. I think that mental toughness is mythological in a sense that if you're not prepared for something, it doesn't really matter how mentally tough people think that you are, you will not survive that. Now maybe, just maybe, you might be a little bit more mentally resilient than somebody else, and so therefore you might be able to withstand the conditions a little easier. But just as an example, let's say that we were to take a NFL football player. Think of the toughest, most badass. Let's take, Ray Lewis, Hall of Fame linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens. And now let's take him. We all consider him to be very tough, very skilled. Obviously, he's overcome many challenges in his life, right? But now we put him overseas and we throw him in some like Navy SEAL uniform, and he's got a rappel out of a helicopter or something like that and go on a mission in the middle of the night with like night vision or something crazy like that. So you can kind of see how quickly that person who already has mental toughness can now be put into a different scenario and they could really struggle. However, you can expand your mental toughness and you can expand your mind and you can grow your mind, and we know these things. And so when you push those buttons to do things that are difficult, you can elicit a response to where when you're in other difficult situations, you are accepting of the surroundings. And this is where I think it's really important to understand there's certain things you can control and there's certain things that you can't control. When you're somebody that starts to build mental toughness and resilience, and you're somebody that starts to become a champion or someone that starts to become a winner, and you're on a winning streak, you are less likely to fold up shop when your surroundings aren't maybe ideal for you to get the job done. Somebody might think, somebody that grows up in Minnesota isn't going to be a volleyball player, right? Because the conditions outside are different than they are if you grow up in Florida or if you grew up in California. Maybe the same could be said as if you grow up in Florida, that maybe you're not playing hockey that often because you didn't grow up in Minnesota. But again, the people that are going to find the things that they love and the people that are going to dedicate themselves to something that they get some sort of exposure to, that's the key, is to get some sort of exposure to it. Once you get exposure to it, then you can start to proceed and start to ask yourself questions of like, how do I build more resilience within this? And when it comes to running, when it comes to lifting, when it comes to fitnessy things, there's really just having a base is one of the things that can really elicit a response from you and really show people that you have mental toughness, that you have mental resilience, that you have this kind of stick-to-itiveness. And then people will say that about you all the time, and then from there it's sort of internally and externally gets manifested over the years to the point where you kind of believe that you have this mental toughness. But again, I would just be a little hesitant with the way that we use that. And I think that we have in our society, we have a tendency to really think a couple things are true. I think we believe that if people don't go through hard times, that they can't become hardened people. If people don't go through really hard and brutal circumstances, that they can't achieve, that they can't succeed, that they can't win. And I have found personally, and I've seen it personally, to where that's not always the case. I think that we like that story because we see that the resilience that gets built from those scenarios. However, I also think that that can happen within someone's own family. So sometimes there's scenarios where the surroundings, the environment, various things may have caused someone's grandfather to go through hardships, someone's dad to go through a lot of hardships. And when the children see that, they get to see what hard times look like, and they maybe make different decisions, and they have a better understanding of what it is they want to do. And because of that, they're not necessarily mentally tougher than the generations before them, but maybe they're more efficient. Maybe they're smarter in some particular way. And so I think we have a tendency to kind of look at like mental toughness and struggle. We hear that so many times when the Olympics come around, that this person really struggled, and they pick these 7 people to just show you over and over again how much they struggled. But how many of those athletes didn't have those same struggles? Each person has their own triumphs. Each person has their own things to overcome, but they're not always so brutal. Sometimes things are really tough, like sometimes someone overcomes sexual abuse. Sometimes somebody overcomes their parents being alcoholics. Sometimes it's not a childhood trauma. Sometimes someone's best friend dies, or their spouse dies. Or we've seen athletes that have had cancer and have come back from that. And we've seen this time and time again, but just because a tragedy doesn't happen to somebody, and just because there's not this crazy struggle of somebody growing up poor, not growing up with the right funds, or not growing up with the right amount of hugs, or whatever these situations may be, we see all kinds of people being successful out there. So one of the points in bringing this up to you is that there is no excuse to not be able to figure out a way to get ahead. Now, we all can agree that maybe some people start out on the track of life maybe further behind than others. Maybe some people start out a little further ahead. Maybe somebody's dad owns multiple businesses, and they just literally turn it over to their son, and their son does a little bit better job with it, and boom, they make it into a success. There's no reason to really stutter step on that. There's no reason to hyper focus on that. And I think that a lot of people do, and they make a mistake of thinking like, man, that guy's got it easy. But just imagine if your struggle was that you didn't have a struggle. That's a bitch too. That's tough in it of itself as well, because now you have to sort of find out who you are. You have to figure out who you are in a different way. And so when these problems get served up to us by God or environment or whatever it is that you want to think that it comes from, they're really blessings in disguise. Your weaknesses end up being something that is the start of your kind of superhero story. It's one of the reasons why I love doing the Power Project so much. One of the reasons why I love doing our podcast is I get to kind of dig in on the person, dig in on their personal life, and I get to learn where's this person's origin story? Where did they fall into where did they fall into a vat of something that some chemicals, toxic chemicals that made them 20 times stronger than any other person on the planet? Those are the stories that I'm looking for. Those are the things that I want to try to find when I'm communicating with people on the Power Project. And more often than not, we get a story. Or more often than not, we get someone, they get super emotional. They start to cry because they did have some of these situations growing up. Again, it doesn't mean that everyone has to have those, but for some people, they have those trials and tribulations from a young age, and those things help to shape them. For me personally, I went through some stuff in school. I wasn't super smart. When I look, and when I say I wasn't super smart, I guess I'll define that. When you talk about like what you're asked to do in school, the tests that you're asked to take in school, and reading comprehension, math, all the different basics of school, I just wasn't good at. And I don't know what to call that other than dumb, other than stupid. I realize some people are like, "Hey, bro, you're not dumb." I don't buy into or subscribe to that anymore. I don't believe that was the case with me. I just think I had a tougher time learning those things. But sometimes you got to call a spade, right? Sometimes you got to just call it like it is. And in that particular situation, when it came to my efficiency in school, I wasn't good at it. So you can call it whatever you'd like. But I was behind. I was slow. And later in life, that actually became an attribute because I was able to take my time with stuff. And because I understood that if I can take my time with things, if I can outlast other people from a time perspective, then I can still win. And that's where I started to build my mental toughness. That's where I started to build my resilience. I also had something that you would call an anti-hero. Chris Williamson has talked about this on his podcast many times before. And my anti-hero was my brother Mike. My brother Mike was addicted to drugs. He was bipolar, and by all accounts, he was kind of my hero when I was a little guy. But as I got older, I just could not understand his reckless behavior because I did not understand drug addiction. For the record, I no longer really think this way, but this is what I saw and this is what I felt when I was a kid seeing some of these things. I've seen my brother arrested in front of me many times. I've seen him fight many times. I've seen him like beat people up and all kinds of things. It's not great, you know, for even though he was my older brother and he was kind of my hero and it was kind of cool to see him kick someone's ass here and there, it still wasn't great to kind of see these things because he was out of control. He was violent. He also, he could just like lose his temper and really fly off the handle. It was scary. He wasn't when he was in that frame of mind, he was not a good person to be around. All the way to the point where when we had my son Jake, I was like, you know what? There's no scenario where I feel comfortable with leaving my brother with our son. And the same thing when our daughter came along as well, because he was there for the beginning stages of that before he unfortunately died in a recovery home from a drug overdose. So having seen a lot of these things and having dealt with his death, these are things that helped put things into better perspective for me. But I want people to know that you can make it from all kinds of different backgrounds. I grew up upper middle class. I grew up with a lot of great things. I grew up with 2 great parents. I grew up with a great support system. I grew up with amazing cousins, amazing uncles, amazing grandparents. I would just say, like, on my mom's side of the family, like, it was more riddled with drugs and alcohol and things like that. But my childhood was incredible. So I think there's kind of this misnomer out there that, there's this misnomer that you got to be mentally tough and you have to have come from some sort of hardship. And I don't really believe that that's true. And also, I think that mental toughness is something that anyone can build within a given field. You can start to become more resilient. But mental toughness to me is really the ability to start to find equanimity, to start to find balance. To me, that's real mental toughness. And so I'll hear the term being thrown around and I'll hear it on podcasts. And I'll hear people say it about certain people that I actually met in person and I've actually hung out with. I've actually gone to dinner with, or I actually spent time with them. And I just shake my head and I'm like, when I hear people talking about the mental toughness that these people have, it's not that they don't have physical mental toughness. They do. They got tons of physical mental toughness. They can run a marathon, or they can jump over a giant wall, or they can do all these crazy, cool physical things. But they don't have it together the way that I think that they should have it together. And who am I to judge, right? But I'm a big fan of equanimity. I'm a big fan of being able to balance your mind and balance your emotions regardless of what's going on in your surroundings. So when I start to think about some adults who say they didn't have this, they didn't have that when they were a kid, and they're blaming their environment, they're blaming their boss, they're blaming X, Y, and Z on why they're not where they should be. They should be making more money. They make $120,000, but they should be making $180,000, and they're pissed because the other guy at work is. Everything is an excuse, and they tend to blame things on other people. In my opinion, those people that are in those situations that are kind of playing the blame game, they are people that haven't had an opportunity yet to be like a little bit more introspective. They haven't had an opportunity to work on their equanimity, to work on the balance of their mind, because they are too caught up in believing the hype that their environment is really shaping them. And your environment can shape you at certain times in your life. And when you're a child, you almost have no choice. But as an adult, you do have a choice. You have a choice to drown out the ambient noises, to drown out the ambient sounds. You do not have to hear them. You don't have to hear when you're walking down the street if someone talks trash to you. I mean, how many of you have walked down the street? You ever have a homeless person like yell at you before? What do? It's like, you don't respond to that. You have no idea what that guy's intentions are. You have no idea what you're going to get dragged into. But then we have a tendency, we heard someone say something about us in the office, or we saw someone said something negative about us online, and we have a tendency to get dragged into that. And equanimity is about having enough balance to where you don't even really feel you need to make a statement about it. That's where that comes into play, and you'll see it from only the best of the best can do it, but Joe Rogan is one of them. Joe Rogan does not dabble in the comment section, which is really amazing. I still dabble in the comment section. A lot of times I'll go in there and I'll try to like poke jokes and stuff, but I do have to admit, every once in a while, somebody gets me and they hook me, and I lose the balance of my mind too. But I'm not going to get into fights. I'm usually just kind of messing around with people, usually just having fun, doing lighthearted stuff. But this idea that, the idea of mental toughness, in my opinion, needs to just be reevaluated a little bit. Mental toughness can be amazing, but mental toughness can also be something that leads you to do foolish things. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that guy ran on a broken ankle. It's like, I don't know how admirable that is. I just kind of think it's dumb. Like, if the guy had to finish a race and he was, you know, getting a certain place and stuff like that, and it really meant a lot to him, then I would understand it. But a lot of times you have another opportunity, you have another day to go back and to kind of start over and to do it again. And for myself, again, being someone that's been blessed with some patience, maybe for some other people, maybe they're not as patient. And that's fine, because we're all different types of people. Everybody's different. But patience is the thing that allowed me to squat over 1,000 pounds. Patience is something that allowed me to have a successful business for over a decade. Patience is something that is allowing me to build my supplement brand Within You. Having the patience and having the poise and not falling for the small tricks. You guys haven't really seen me do, you know, with how long social media has been around, I'm not really doing a lot of things that are out of my character. Although you might have seen my Instagram, I'm posting some stuff with you guys to share some weird, wacky, fun stuff that I think is part of my personality. And I'm sharing things that I just kind of find interesting. And I'm not going to say that I've never done that before. I'm not going to say I've never overreached before, because everyone's probably guilty of it to some extent. But the best thing that I can do is continue to be myself and continue to lean into these things that I feel are in my best interest. One of the ways that I was able to build some strength and build equanimity and build sort of like poise was through being successful in the first place. Once I was successful, I was able to kind of go back and reevaluate and analyze so many things that I once knew, and then my perspective on those things changed drastically.
If you're someone that's taking supplements or vitamins or anything to help move the needle in terms of your health, how do you know you really need them? And the reason why I'm asking you, how do you know, is because many people don't know their levels of their testosterone, their vitamin D, all these other labs like their thyroid, and they're taking these supplements to help them function at peak performance. But that's why we've partnered with Merrick Health for such a long time now, because you can get yourself different lab panels like the Power Project panel, which is a comprehensive set of labs to help you figure out what your different levels are. And when you do figure out what your levels are, you'll be able to work with a patient care coordinator that will give you suggestions as far as nutrition optimization, supplementation, or if you're someone who's a candidate and it's necessary, hormonal optimization to help move you in the right direction so you're not playing guesswork with your body. Also, if you've already gotten your lab work done, but you just want to get a checkup, we also have a checkup panel that's made so that you can check up and make sure that everything is moving in the right direction if you've already gotten comprehensive lab work done. This is something super important that I've done for myself. I've had my mom work with Merrick. We've all worked with Merrick just to make sure that we're all moving in the right direction and we're not playing guesswork with our body. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at merrickhealth.com/powerproject. And at checkout, enter promo code POWERPROJECT to save 10% off any one of these panels or any lab on the entire website. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
When I was younger, I was pretty pissed off that I didn't do well in school. I was kind of mad about it, basically. And I used that energy sometimes for good stuff, but sometimes for bad stuff too. It made me feel very insecure, and lifting was my way out. Getting stronger, getting bigger was my way out. That's why I took it to those extremes, because I thought that I could be successful in that realm. And I thought, you know what? Who gives a shit what you're successful in? Get successful in something and you'll still be able to show them, kind of thing. But that's not always the greatest path to go down. And you guys could say, oh, well, shit, it worked for you. You know, that's cool. It really worked for you. But I've seen so many people that it doesn't work for. That's why I'm saying I don't think it's the greatest recipe. I think that the knowledge I'm sharing with you now, you know, like the sets and the reps and the programming that a trainer or coach might share with you, or some of the lifting tips I might share with you, is so you don't have to tear your pec 3 times like I did to be able to bench press 578 pounds. It's kind of it's easy for me to say now because I am over the hump and I have done these things already, but I think I could have handled a lot of things with a more even mind all throughout my whole life, and it would have served me. Because it's really rare to find a circumstance or a situation where being calm and waiting to have the correct response rather than just overreacting. Every once in a while, there's some sort of emergency situation where you said, look, any action probably would have been good, but overreacting to any situation, no matter how terrifying of emergency it is, or you know, the things that first responders and those people deal with, they know these things. They know they have to have a balance of their mind. They know it's not about mental toughness, it's about strategy. You need to start to develop strategy. So some mental toughness, some, you know, having a little bit of oomph in there, all those things are great. And the fact that you don't mind waking up at 6 a.m. and going to the gym and some of these things, those things are cool. But here's another piece that I think is missing from the puzzle as well. We have a tendency to say, I didn't want to go in the gym in the morning, but I went anyway. And because of that, look how tough I am. I'm mentally tough. Here I am running. You guys see me do it all the time, right? Here I am lifting, benching. Here I'm doing all these things. Those things aren't a sign of mental toughness. You know what they're a sign of? Doing the things that you like to do. That's all it really is. It's not anything more than that, because if you didn't like to do it, you wouldn't actually be doing it. And you might find yourself, you may waver here and there. You might like be powerlifting for 2 weeks, then you're bodybuilding for a week, and then you're doing CrossFit for a week. The reason why you're bouncing around so much is you don't like any of them enough to commit all the way to one thing. Or you possibly like the variety of it. You want to keep your athleticism while also building some strength. And those things are fine, but you're going to have to find the discipline and the strength to be able to stick to that. Sometimes one of the strongest things you can do is like take a day off from the gym, or reevaluate what it is that you're doing and start to come up with a better strategy on how you're going to execute these things. If we're just going to constantly rely on mental toughness, you hear people say this often, you're just going to run out of energy at some point. You can only be like on fire and fired up like that for so long. Some people are able to do it longer than others. Some people are able to kind of hold on and be able to outlast people with just like vigor and just mental toughness. But if you have good strategy, if you have a good plan, the good plan will outlast everything. So it's sometimes a difficult thing for you to step back and say, I don't necessarily need mental toughness for this. This isn't about mental toughness. This is about, what do I like? Because if you like something enough, you won't talk yourself out of it. If you're like, man, I've really been missing some workouts, and I don't know, this happened and that happened. And if you start running that through your head, it means that you don't like it that much. And that is okay. I want you to sit down. I want you to think about it a little bit more. At the moment, why don't you like this as much as maybe you should. Like what is blocking you? And what is blocking you is you're probably trying to do what you're doing with too much intensity. So let's say that you're trying to go on a carnivore diet, right? Well, maybe it's so far away from what you were doing previously that you can't seem to stick to it for more than 3 days. You can't seem to stick to it for more than 5 days. And then you go off of it. Now you're listening to this and you're like, shit, I don't know if maybe Mark is right. Maybe I'm not as interested in losing weight as I thought. No, you might be interested in losing weight, but you might not be able to hold yourself accountable to a carnivore diet because maybe it's too strict for you. In most cases with a carnivore diet, there's some people that are able to do it for a pretty long time, but in most cases of a carnivore diet, or in most cases of people prepping for a bodybuilding show, these are temporary things. These are temporary things, and these are temporary looks with the strength that someone has for a powerlifting meet. These are temporary things. Now, the person prepping for the powerlifting meet, the person prepping for the bodybuilding show, they still look great, and they're still tremendously strong after their shows and after their competitions. But that is a person that is skilled in that particular thing. And so when it comes to mental toughness, one of the key values and virtues that you'll see every single time with somebody that you attribute mental toughness to is that they have a skill set. When you develop a skill set, it's really irrelevant on whether somebody else thinks that you're tough or not, or whether you think that you're tough, or whether you think that you're resilient. If you have a really good skill set with jiu-jitsu, and you're in a jiu-jitsu tournament, that's going to be the thing that gets you through, is your really good skill set. Now, if a bunch of things don't go your way, and guy headbutts you and breaks your nose, and you have to have some resilience, that's when we can start to say, okay, well, yeah, you have some grit, you have some guile, you have a relentless urge to win. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. I don't think it means that you are mentally tough. I think it means more that you just like what you're doing, and maybe even you love it. So those are all the things I think to keep in mind, because I think sometimes that if we're just looking at everything with mental toughness all the time, we're going to think that we are not enough, that we're not tough enough, that we're not strong enough, we're not good enough. Man, I'm not mentally tough enough to stay on that diet. It's not mental toughness. It's how much do you like it? So rather than trying to reintroduce what didn't work, what you introduced in the first place, reintroduce something slightly different. Reintroduce a small abbreviation of the carnivore diet. Reintroduce a small abbreviation of what it was you were doing previously. Maybe add in a little bit of carbs. Maybe add in a cheat day. Maybe add in something. Maybe make small changes. Remember when I had the online coach, when I had Raymond on our podcast, and he's helped tons of people get shredded up, and he's helped himself get shredded for a lot of competitions, and works with a lot of natural athletes. He said, look, man, it's just like one small tweak. And I know you guys hear it from me a lot. I'm not a huge fan of really messing around with your calories much, but sometimes it's not, hey, starting on Monday, actually it should never be this way. Starting on Monday, no carbs. I'm not going to eat any carbs for the next 3 months. Let's just not start there. Instead, start with something way simpler. For the next meal, I think I'm just going to see how I feel without any carbs. After the next meal, I'm going to go on a 10-minute walk. Not, I'm going to go on a 10-minute walk 3 times every day, and if I don't do it, we got to get away, as my buddy Joel Green was saying recently, we got to get ourselves away from this idea of this daily stuff all the time. A couple daily routine habits that can be really nice. These things that you develop to where they're now embedded into your lifestyle. But if you don't have options with those things, if you don't develop a skill set in the first place to be able to do a multitude of things, it just makes it that much harder. If you say to yourself, I'm going to deadlift every day, that's just going to be cumbersome. It's just going to be kind of tough. If you deadlift 500 pounds right now and you're saying, I'm going to go in the gym and I'm going to deadlift at minimum 70% every day. I mean, no one would really ever do that, because no one really does that with deadlift. But You get my point? Like, that is a really tough, that's hard to bite off, that's hard to chew. Instead, for your fitness, it might be better to say, a couple times a week, maybe once or twice a week, I'm going to do some sprints. 1 or 2 times a week, I'm going to do something a little bit longer range for cardio. Maybe twice a week, once or twice a week, I'll do something for strength. Once or twice a week, I'll do something for hypertrophy. Now it sounds like we're talking about something reasonable, and that's reasonable for a maniac fitness person. That's not reasonable for a regular person. What would be more reasonable for a regular person that likes to play golf and has a life and likes to do other shit, and they're not me or you, that's just a meathead that loves to hit the gym. It's not someone that's just regularly listening to the Power Project, listening to Saturday School all the time. For those people, they need to just select, I'm going to go lift some weights with my friends and see how that feels. They go and say, I should probably go back. Keep it really easy. And maybe they start out by going once or twice a month, once or twice a week. It's better than what they were doing previously. Maybe they like it enough. They're like, oh man, I liked some of that stuff, but I mainly only like the body weight stuff. Maybe I'll try to incorporate a little bit of push-ups, a little bit of lunges on my morning walks. That's where you want to get a lot of people to, because again, if we have this idea and you wrap yourself up too much in mental toughness, hopefully you're not getting too mad at me and not disagreeing with me too much. Hopefully you're kind of approaching this with a little bit more of a white belt mentality. And I'm open to criticism, so please put it in the comments, because I'm open to evaluate some of that and reevaluate my own thoughts on this very topic. This is a little bit of just smelly theory. This is a little bit of smelly science here that I'm giving you today. That I don't always think that everything comes down to just being mentally tough. And I think that if we rely on that and lean on that too much, then what's the opposite of us feeling like we're tough? It's probably not good for a lot of us men. It probably doesn't leave you feeling very good about yourself. So for me, I like to give myself a lot of options. I actually don't mind giving myself a bunch of outs. For today, I went on a walk. And probably when I get done with this, I will probably go on an 8-minute run. And that's my version of giving myself just enough of an out to where I can still accomplish something that I feel is worthy. I can still finish something that I felt was good exercise for the day. But it's also not this huge mountain to climb. So I've come across a lot of these things. The way that I've kind of figured out some of these things and the way that I have sort of unlocked some of these things is in this very arboretum that we're filming this footage right now. I have come to these conclusions on walks. I've come to these conclusions on runs. I have found that it was easier for me to absorb some information I was hearing via my phone and my headphones when I was on a walk or when I was on a run. Sometimes on a run you get a little lost and you can't always pay attention. So what I would have to do is occasionally I would listen to something on a walk or run and I'd say, shit, and what I would do is I would screen capture it, or I'd put it down in my notes. And then I would go to like Phil's Coffee or Temple Coffee here in Davis, and I would sit down and I'd actually listen to the content that I selected for the day. And I would really pay attention to it, and I'd actually sit there and take some notes and be diligent with it. And I would write down what day it was. I'd write down the content creator. I'd write down the YouTube channel that it came from. I tried to put down as much information as I could. I started off with doing that in a journal, but then I moved to kind of writing it down on my phone, because what happens with the phone, which is nice, is you can type in your phone in your search section and you can find stuff a little easier. But I like the physicality of writing stuff down, and actually I think it helped me lock stuff in a lot better. And I got taught this idea of equanimity from my buddy James Smith, James the Thinker Smith from EliteFTS.com. James has been a longtime friend. He's somebody that just shared a lot of his concepts and a lot of his ideas with me, and those things helped me a lot. And you could find out more information on stuff like this if you look up Stoicism. You start to study the ancient Greek philosophers. You start to study some of the ancient philosophers, and you'll be able to dig up a lot of great information. The Daily Stoic is a really great resource. That's a great book that you should check out.
A constant thing that's been beneficial for all of our health has been intaking enough protein, but also intaking quality protein. And that's why we've been partnering with Good Life Proteins for years now. Good Life not only sells Piedmontese beef, which is our favorite beef, and the main reason why it's our favorite is because they have cuts of meat that have higher fat content, like their ribeyes and their chuck eyes, but they also have cuts of meat like their flat iron. Andrew, what's the macros on the flat iron?
Yeah, dude. So the flat iron has 23 grams of protein, only 2 grams of fat. But check this out. Their grass-fed sirloin essentially has no fat and 27 grams of protein.
There we go. So whether you're dieting and you want lower fat cuts or higher fat cuts, that's there. But you can also get yourself chicken. You can get yourself fish. You can get yourself scallops. You can get yourself all types of different meats. And I really suggest going to Good Life and venturing in and maybe playing around with your proteins. I mean, going back to the red meat, there's picanha.
There's all kinds of
there's
stuff.
Chorizo sausage. There's maple bacon.
That stuff's incredible.
The maple bacon is
Yes,
so good.
maple bacon's really good.
Yo, my girl put those in these bell peppers with a steak and chicken.
Yes.
And oh my God, it was so good. But either way, guys, protein is essential. And the Good Life is the place where you can get all of your high quality proteins. So Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, you can head over to goodlifeproteins.com and enter promo code PowerProject to save 20% off your entire order. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
A couple other places where I was able to find some really great information was from, I call him my mentor, even though I never got the opportunity to meet him. He died many years ago. Is Jim Rohn. It's R-O-H-N, Jim Rohn. I would listen to him a lot. And a lot of his speeches and a lot of things he said really resonated with me because it was stuff where I was like, man, I never thought to do that. I never tried that before. I remember him saying this. He said, this is a little bit off topic, but hang in there with me for a second. I remember him saying that he had a mentor, and his mentor said, something like, tell me about your dreams, tell me about your goals. And he was like, huh? And he's like, as soon as you reveal yourself, as soon as you say that you don't know what your goals are, I can predict your bank account. And he was able to predict Jim Rohn's bank account within, just a few bucks. And he's like, you got $32 in your bank account or something. And he was like, how did you know that? He's like, well, I just know that you're broke because you don't have a plan. And it's important to start to develop a plan. I actually hung out with Josh Settlage the other day, our boy Settlegate. And Josh has since moved on from Slingshot. He started his own business. Very proud of him. He's doing a great job. And I said, Josh actually texted me today. Give me a moment here. Do a little edit. Josh texted me today. He was in our gym. He was in our new studio yesterday. And he said, hey, congratulations on the new studio. It's really cool. It's great to see how far the podcast has come. It was really fun hanging out with you guys and seeing what you're building. And I wrote back to him and I said, hey, write out what your version of this would look like. So you may not own a physical location. You may have no desire to own a physical location, but I have a physical location for my podcast where I have all the weights and all the stuff that I need, all the stuff that I like for me and Nsima and guests to come in and train and lift, for me and Kenny Williams to do some anabolic activities out of there, for us to do all the stuff that we want to do out of that studio. So for you right now, in your own head, start to think about, again, it doesn't have to be that you're thinking of a studio that has a gym and a podcast in it, but what's your own version of that? What does your future look like? What do you want to have? What is something that is a tangible thing that isn't necessarily just like a car or a house it could be some of these things, but you want it to be something that is going to really help you to solidify the decisions, the choices, the showing how you were able to stick to something for so long and manifest that and turn it into something that's going to help make everything that you're doing stronger. So with Josh, I asked him, to write it out, and he said it's already written, and he sent me this, which is like a version of, we'll just pop it up on the screen. I'll text it to Ryan. We'll pop it up on the screen, but it's a version of something that he already kind of dreamt up himself. I should have known that he was already on it. I should have known that he already drew it up. But like, what's the thing you want to do? You want to do photography, you want to own your own studio one day, you want to do audio, you want to be a track coach, you want to be a volleyball coach. Like, maybe you want to be a volleyball coach, maybe you want to have your own gym that has a volleyball net, and on the other side it's got some physical therapy stuff. On the other side it's got these different things there. If you think about these things and you develop a plan, it's not necessarily about mental toughness, it's not about your background, it's not about where you came from or where you didn't come from, it's not about your parents, it's not about your brother who's got millions of dollars who's not helping you. That stuff is irrelevant. You need to figure out a way to help yourself, and the way to help yourself is develop skill sets. You already have some skills within you. You already have a skill set baked into you. That is what my mother has taught me, and that is what I'm trying to share with the world, is that everything that you need is already within you. It's all on the inside. Hey, why do you take steroids, Smelly? I take steroids because they're awesome. Sorry, Mom. But you get my point. Everything that you need, you're already equipped with. You have everything already inside you to do all the things that you want to do. It is going to take some sort of mental toughness. I'll surrender to that. But it's mainly a skill set, and it's mainly following what you like to do. I'll finish with this last story. Just yesterday, I heard a friend, and even my own son, we were getting some conversation about this as well. And somebody was advising my friend to get more followers, he should kind of be more like X or more like Y. He should be more like this guy. He should be more like that person. And me and my other friend were like, no. Don't do that. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to mess around and do some different things here and there. But we're in a really cool time. We're in a really cool time where there's more people making more money on more platforms than ever. We're not tied down with just mainstream TV. The TV doesn't own us anymore. Now we're owned by social media, but at least we have a lot more avenues. And there's more avenues for more people to be successful. Now that we have more avenues for people to be successful, there's more avenues for the people that are successful to have people underneath them, that work underneath them, that become successful, that then become the people that are sought out for. Oftentimes we're seeing this just kind of happen a lot. So be yourself and lean into that. I know that you hear it all the time, but there's really no reason to. There's always good reason to be open-minded. There's always good reason to listen to criticism and critiques. Maybe you do need to speak louder. Maybe you do need to speak more clearly. Maybe you do need to slow down. Maybe some advice from people. Maybe you do need to be sharper with your points or quicker to get to the point, or whatever these things are. Those are actually good, healthy criticisms that can help you. But you're not trying to change who you are. You're not doing a lot of things. If you're just a little uncomfortable with some stuff, it's probably just because it's new or it's novel. It's something you're introducing that you haven't done before. And so of course you're going to feel a little awkward doing it. Just getting in front of a camera is going to be awkward. But getting used to this is going to at some point feel very natural. And if what you're doing doesn't feel natural, it's going to be seen by everybody. It's not going to look authentic. And once it doesn't look authentic, it's hard to get. You might get the likes and you might get this and that a little bit here and there, but it's going to be hard to sustain that all the time. You have to put that uniform on every single time, and it's just not worth it to go down that pathway. I hope all of you can join in my journey and to find equanimity. I know I share it a lot. I know I've asked you guys to look it up, but I'll tell you to look it up again because I think it has tremendous value. Go ahead and study up on some of those Stoic philosophers that I mentioned. Go and check out some of Jim Rohn. Go and check out the Daily Stoic. I know that you'll really enjoy that. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later.
Oh, hello there. You made it to the end of the video, which means that you'll like this video. It's another deep dive. I'm pretty sure you're going to like it. And Well, at this point, you're probably still here because you just want to hear what I'm going to tell you about this video, right? Well,
Say something.
no, no.